All right, let's dive right into an explainer that is absolutely going to transform the way you prepare for high-stakes meetings. We're going to map out exactly how you can take your next presentation from a really frustrating, silent boardroom defeat to an absolute, unquestionable triumph. And we're going to do it by using AI, not just as a glorified spell checker, but as a top-tier strategist. So picture this scenario. Honestly, almost every professional has experienced this, but nobody really talks about it openly. You spend 3 grueling hours meticulously building a presentation, right? You review it the night before, it looks sharp, professional, well-designed. You walk into the room feeling totally confident. But then, halfway through, you notice something terrible. The audience has mentally checked out. You see them glancing at their phones. When you finally finish, what do you get? Polite applause, empty eyes, and absolutely no decision made. You walk out knowing you failed, but you aren't exactly sure why.
Which brings us to part 1, the silent boardroom failure and the missing spine.
The reason that silent failure happens in the first place isn't a lack of information. It's a lack of architecture. A deck without a single central argument, what we call a missing spine, is really just a forgettable slide dump. You know the old way of building a deck, right? You open your software, dump in a ton of data, get completely lost by slide 12, and then just throw a weak summary at the very end. But the new architecture-first method completely flips the script. You define your argument, map the structure, and anticipate objections before you ever even touch presentation software. It literally turns 3 hours of mindless busy work into 30 minutes of highly targeted strategy.
So let's look at how we actually do this in part 2, your AI McKinsey coach and the power phrases.
To make this massive shift, we're enlisting AI. But again, not as a basic writing assistant. We are going to prompt it to act as a senior McKinsey presentation coach, and we're going to use a highly specialized 3-part toolkit. These 3 distinct power phrases, when used in this exact sequence, will build an ironclad blueprint for your ideas. Seriously, it's stronger than anything most professionals can build manually. Let's start with the very first one.
The crucial point here is absolute clarity. This first phrase literally forces you to articulate the single, central claim your audience absolutely must believe when they leave the room. Notice I didn't say a list of 3 takeaways. It is one singular claim. For example, instead of vaguely asking AI to help you present Q3 performance, you'd say something like, "The one message this presentation must land is that Q3 underperformance was caused by delayed supplier onboarding, and our corrective actions mean Q4 will exceed targets." Boom! That completely eliminates useless filler, because every single subsequent decision has to prove that one specific claim. So, once you have that single, laser-focused message, how do you stretch it into a compelling 15-minute logical argument? Well, you use the second power phrase, "Give me a slide-by-slide structure." But here's the catch. You have to be super specific. You need to tell your AI exactly how many slides you need, exactly who the audience is, say, maybe it's 5 financially focused board members, and exactly how much time you have. Your coach will then hand back a blueprint where every single slide has a dedicated job. This guarantees that no slide exists just because you happen to have some extra data lying around.
Now for my favorite part. Part 3. Embedding audience resistance and the Trojan horse.
The third power phrase asks, "My audience will resist because." And guys, this is the exact difference between a pitch that almost wins and one that actually wins. Instead of ending on your heels with a weak, defensive FAQ slide at the end of the meeting, you're going to map every specific audience objection directly into the narrative flow. Say you know the CFO rejected a previous proposal on cost. Well, your coach maps a 3-year ROI model right into slide 3. If the CEO is terrified of disruption, slide 7 embeds a phased rollout timeline showing 0 impact. You are stealthily dismantling their resistance inside the argument like a Trojan horse before they even have a chance to open their mouths.
Next up is part 4, writing headlines that work and sounding natural.
Okay, so once your architecture and your defense are totally set, you absolutely have to avoid the single biggest mistake presenters make when they finally start typing, and that is using labels instead of actual claims. A weak label like Q3 performance just announces a really boring topic, but a strong claim like Q3 underperformance was caused by one fixable factor, well, that actively builds your argument. It tells the audience exactly what that specific piece of the presentation proves, which lets them follow your logic effortlessly, even if they're just skimming.
And as for your actual delivery, you can use your AI coach to generate speaker notes using this exact, perfect formula. 3 conversational sentences expanding on the headline, 1 piece of supporting evidence, and 1 smooth transition sentence to the next point. This specific structure ensures you sound like a confident, natural presenter who is actively guiding the room rather than someone nervously reading a script verbatim. It's a total game changer.
Let's bring it all together in Part 5, the 4-step sequence and the ultimate prompt.
Now that we understand the mechanics behind this, let's tie it all into a streamlined workflow you can use before your very next meeting. Step 1. Define that single central message. Step 2. Request the slide-by-slide structure. Step 3. Embed the audience's resistance directly into the flow. And finally, Step 4. Build the slides. This sequence guarantees that by the time you finally open your presentation software, you aren't trying to invent an argument on the fly. You are simply executing a fully stress-tested 12-slide blueprint.
And to make this incredibly easy, here is the ultimate master prompt that acts as a magic bullet. You literally tell the AI to act as a senior McKinsey presentation coach. You feed it your message, your audience's profile, and their specific objections. You ask for the structure, you ask how resistance is mapped to specific areas, and this is the crazy part. You ask it to script the first 60 seconds of your presentation word for word. Those opening words are designed specifically to make your audience lean forward instantly.
Picture that professional from the beginning of our explainer, but this time they are walking back into the boardroom with this exact blueprint in hand. They aren't just bringing slides anymore, they have a plan. They know every single objection has already been mapped out and neutralized. As they deliver those first 60 seconds, they see the board actually leaning forward. They see the approval in their eyes. Ask yourself, are you ready to stop just making slides and start building real arguments? Because when you do it this way, the presentation is won before the very first slide ever even appears on the screen.